with the old and in with the new here on State of Play. Let's get into it with Stephanie Hansen, former Newcastle County Council president and now with the law firm of Young, Conaway, Stargett and Taylor. Michael Stafford is also an attorney, columnist, and his work has been featured on MSNBC and on Australian television. Happy New Year to you both. Welcome back.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
So we told you this was coming. Stephanie, let's start with you. Our predictions of what the hot topics of 2015 were going to be. Let's see what you said.
Because gas prices are so low now, it may jumpstart the whole discussion again about the gas tax and being able to fund infrastructure. So that might be helpful. And the secondly, another item that was at least on DENREC's agenda, that it's spring, it's going to rain, it's going to flood. So we might again be talking about perhaps some sort of increased funding for stormwater management and flooding.
So gas prices are still low. We didn't get a gas tax though, but there was some movement on transportation infrastructure funding. Was that enough? Is there still more to be done?
Well, if we think back, the whole idea behind the gas tax, it was going to be a 10-cent increase on the gas tax, and it was going to fund $50 million $50 million to the transportation trust fund, and that was going to go to fix our roads and bridges and whatnot. So it was $50 million with a gas tax. We didn't get a gas tax, but we did get an increase in the motor vehicle fees, which brought in about half of that, and the ability to then borrow the remainder. So I think maybe half, 3/4 of a loaf we got with that.
Okay, so gas prices are still low.
There's
still challenges for the Transportation Trust Fund.
Right.
It's an election year, so you would think that gas tax would probably not be a part of the discussion this year?
I do not see it being part of an election year discussion.
Then let's get to stormwater management, which you also predicted would get some address in the spring. Thoughts on what happened with that?
My prediction failed miserably. No, we did nothing on the stormwater the fee or the water resource fee. It's coming back. DENREC is bringing it back, as they should, because this is an issue that is going to continually come up. I've been involved with this whole question of what to do regarding stormwater management since the 90s, when I was on Governor Minner's stormwater task force, and it's cyclical. You know, we'll go through a few very wet years, people will get very upset about it, they recognize it's a problem that has to be addressed, and then it'll dry out a little bit and we'll go through a few more times. But this is a geologic problem. And I say that because sea level is rising and Delaware is subsiding. Those are geologic phenomena that are not going to stop. So it's an issue that we can put off for another year, but we're not going to be able to put it off forever. So eventually we're going to have to go back and really spend some time figuring this out.
And maybe in an El Nino year, we get a little bit wetter, maybe it gets a little bit more attention in 2016. We'll see.
We'll see.
All right, Michael, you are up. Let's take a look at your 2015 predictions.
I think this year is going to be the year that education becomes a very prominent issue down in Dover. I think we're going to see a lot of action in the legislature on education issues. I think it's going to be really the focal point of this coming session.
All right, so education did dominate a lot of the discussion in the legislature, and even since we saw Secretary of Education Mark Murphy pack his bags and leave his cabinet post. Does that kind of count? Are you going to take that as your prediction?
Definitely. I read the tea leaves correctly there. The issues driving a lot of this. I mean, definitely some of the challenges with Secretary Murphy had to do with personality and credibility and the relationships he was able to build or not build with his peers, particularly among the superintendents, but among other educational officials. I think with Dr. Godowski coming in, you now have somebody in that role who is very credible, very well respected, well liked by everybody. He's done other people's jobs. He's got the resume to go with the position, and he's able to really collaborate with people. So I think it's a very positive change.
All right, so let's look ahead then to 2016, and we'll see this tape rolled back in January of 2017. Is 2016 going to be the year that the kind of downfall of DuPont really affects the states economically and even politically here as we enter election year?
It's going to have a huge impact.
I think absolutely it's going to be part of the dominant discussion, because what we're going to see is 1,700 people are losing their jobs, and those are good paying jobs, and they're going to be looking around for places to go. And I think what it's going to sort of expose is the lack of real kind of economic strategic development planning that's been done, particularly at the county level. So that's going to expose weaknesses and holes in our fabric, particularly in Wilmington, but that will affect the entire county.
Yeah, there's got to be a middle, right? There's got to be somewhere, if you think about the economy as a continuum, there's got to be a middle ground between stocking the shelves at the Amazon warehouse in Middletown and being a doctor, a lawyer, a banker. And a lot of these jobs, when you look at who's being riffed and terminated by DuPont, they're solid middle class jobs, research scientists, engineers, those kind of people. Those are exactly the kind of jobs that every state in America is trying to attract right now, and we're losing them, we're hemorrhaging them. I think bigger picture with Delaware, historically with DuPont, more recently with MBNA, I mean, we have had a development model of almost being akin to a company town. What happens to the company town when the mine closes? And that's in some ways the situation we're dealing with, where we've had these sort of anchor employers. MBNA, a couple of the other banks, DuPont, they're gone now. And that's not the model that we're not going to replace them with another anchor tenant in the Delaware Mall.
So either one of you want to go out on a limb, maybe on a non-political, non-election issue that will jump to the top this year? Maybe some sort of social issue that's going to get attention 2016?
It's hard to say non-political or non-election year. What I think we'll probably see another discussion about, although it is political and it's election, is the death penalty. I think we're going to continue to, that's going to be another discussion that'll be had down in the General Assembly this year.
She's already taken the death penalty. So I'm thinking guns. You know, the frequency with which we seem to have a quarterly national conversation about gun control. I think we're going to have that repeated. I mean, obviously, a couple of years ago there was some movement on that particular issue, but it keeps coming up. I think we're going to see that again this year.
Any other kind of election news you expect to be making? Expect to be seeing this year, Stephanie?
No.
No. Okay. Very good. We've just set the agenda for 2016. Let's see who else can follow our script. Stephanie Hansen, Michael Stafford, thanks so much for being here on State of Play.